care, mindfulness in this day and age, in this moment. It's great to have you back here. And so what I'd like to do is, I'd like to begin with just a very brief mindfulness practice. We did a little breathing exercise last week. So just to kind of get us settled in, would like to invite you to join me in a brief practice. So just get comfortable, just wherever you find yourself in this moment, just settling in, intentionally bringing your attention into this moment and knowing that we have arrived in a brand new moment. If you choose to, you can close your eyes or just kind of have a soft downward gaze so you're not a lot of visual distraction. And just perhaps thanking yourself for making this time for yourself to just step away from everything else that's going on in your life and just taking some time to focus on taking care of yourself. You may notice that there's all kinds of distractions all the time, but just as best you can, bringing yourself into this moment just with your own experience. And noticing that you are sitting or noticing that you're in the position that you find yourself by sensing contact with perhaps a chair, a piece of furniture, perhaps even you're on your bed, just noticing the contact of the body, a sense of pressure, sense of weightedness. You may notice that your feet are on the floor, the soles of your feet are on the floor. Just inviting a sense of wakefulness and presence, and at the same time, a sense of ease. Just noticing, checking in with the quality of the mind. Is it busy? Do you feel distracted? Lots of thinking, thoughts, or perhaps a sense of spaciousness? Again, no right or wrong. It's just helpful to know what our inner landscape looks like in the moment. Maybe noticing if there's any emotions, any feeling states. Checking into the body and noticing any sensations, perhaps noticing any tightness or tension, areas of holding or stress. Easily hold stress and tightness in the area of the face, forehead, around the eyes, the tiny muscles around the eyes, the jaw, the neck and the shoulders, lower back. If you notice any areas of tension or stress, then just taking 3 intentional breaths, and on the out breath, just let go. What's it like to let go? Be supported a little bit more. We're oftentimes not even aware that we're tight or there's areas of stress, tension, until we actually bring our attention to the body. When we notice, when we're here, when we're present, we have choices. We can take a breath, we can let go, roll our shoulders, we can smile, have the opportunity to make choices. Now just bringing your attention to the sense of the breath in the body. So wherever the physical sensation of the breath is most accessible to you, maybe in the belly, could be in the area of the chest, expanding, contracting with the breath. Perhaps at the nostrils, a gentle movement, sensation of air moving in and out of the nostril. Not needing to change the the rate of the breath or the depth of the breath, but just using it as a anchor for our attention. So when we notice that the mind's traveled off, it's been distracted, knowing that this is what the mind does. It's nothing, don't have to judge ourselves. We just notice this, and then we bring our attention back to the breath and we begin again. Just with this breath. Noticing the in-breath and the out-breath. Being curious about your experience, being kind. This is the way that it is in this moment. Now, just once again, checking in, broadening, expanding your awareness, checking into the body again, noticing what's here now, what sensations are here. You may want to, if you'd noticed any tension or tightness at the beginning of this practice, just checking in there now. What's here in this moment? Maybe different, maybe the same. No right or wrong. Simply that when we're paying attention, when we're actually present for our experience, we have the opportunity to participate in our lives, to make choices. So notice again that you are sitting on a chair, laying, wherever you find yourself. Coming back into this moment. And if your eyes are closed, just gently opening them and reconnecting with your surroundings. So thank you for joining me in that, if you chose to just take a brief moment to practice. And what I'd like to do is just say what we're going to briefly talk about. I'm going to talk about what I'm going to talk about, what we're going to talk about today. And just very briefly summarize what we talked about last week. We're going to do another exercise, a de-stressing or just a mindfulness exercise, a practice that you can do for yourself. You can also bring into the classroom or working with patients wherever you find yourself, your family. Going to talk about self-care, in particular mindful self-care, and what are practices, what are ways in which we can do this. And then just talk about how moving forward in the week, you might be able to, or you have opportunities to practice mindfulness, whether that's formally in a meditation or just bringing it into your moments in the day. So that's what today looks like. And I made a couple of slides I don't want to PowerPoint you out, but just a couple of slides to keep us focused. So I'm just screen sharing. I'm going to, all right, begin our slideshow. Okay, so just very briefly, last week we talked about mindfulness and its definition. We went into a couple of things, but essentially it's just being here right now and having an attitude of openness, curiosity, and kindness. Being really interested in the only time we can show up for our lives, which is right now. And I also told you a bit about the story of the fifth grader that, with his practicing breathing and some mindfulness, it really helped him to be able to check into when he was becoming reactive and actually was able to self-regulate, and the implications for doing that. All right. So talking about what mindfulness is not, is we talked about stress, we talked about stress reactivity, and that it's not that mindfulness is about relieving stress. We've got stress, we've got these events that are difficult, challenging, and but rather it's how we can put these sources of stress in perspective. How we look at stress is and events is really how we can manage it better. And another way of thinking of this is pain. And when I talk about pain, it could be stress. We could substitute the word stress and the resistance. So the pieces that I don't want this to be happening. I want it to be different. Why does it? Whatever our perception of the event, the situation, the experience, when we resist that, we really can increase the suffering, the intensity of the stress, the intensity of the pain. So the benefits of practicing mindfulness. So essentially, the gift that mindfulness can give us, the opportunity that mindfulness can give us, is there's this quote by Viktor Frankl, who, if you don't know who Viktor Frankl was, he was a concentration camp survivor, and also the founder, that's the proper word, of existential psychology. And he says that between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in that response lies our growth and our freedom. And what we're talking about with mindfulness is this possibility of working within that space, of being present between the time that we notice events, notice whether that's good, whether we see it as positive or negative. But between that place, with mindfulness, with being present, with participating in our experience, we provide a space in which we then can make choices. And the choices that we make can potentially change every moment that follows. So as far as space, when I just talked about space in the Viktor Frankl quote, is creating the pause, the power of the pause we talk about, creating a purposeful pause with being attentive, with being mindful. And so I'm going to end the show for the moment. Here we go. And I just want to pause there for a moment and just ask if there's any questions or if anybody this prior week noticed anything as far as perhaps reactivity, noticed any, we talked about that, the stress and how we react to stress, noticed any of that, or were able to practice any relaxing sighs or anything that was helpful in bringing your attention into the present moment with that sense of curiosity. So I think you can unmute yourself if you have anything to add, any comment that you'd like to make. Give that a moment. I'm not seeing any real live people here today. I hear an unmuted line though. Would anybody like to share?
Okay, I'll share. Yesterday I downloaded that the 10% Happier app, and then I used one of the meditations, and I really did like it, and I like the app a lot. So thanks for letting us know that it's free for educators.
Yeah, sure. Natalie, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
What did you, when you said you liked the meditation a lot, can I ask what was it about that you found helpful or that you liked?
I just like that it was, I used one of the ones for like going to sleep. I actually used it like with my son too. And I just like that it was just very like simple, and it was, I don't know. And he seemed to like it. Like I've used other ones too that, sometimes they're like, no, turn this off or this is scary or,
Mhm.
but it was just kind of simple and it was short. Like it also gave like the option for like doing like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Um,
Mhm.
so that was nice too. We just started with a 10-minute one. And,
Mhm.
actually when it was over, I was like, oh, I should have did like a little bit longer, but I like that as well, that you could do like different options.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, and then I was actually going like through a little bit more um, and then there was others that were more like imagery, like the one that I did wasn't like as imagery related.
Mhm.
But again, it was just very like, relaxing, but just kind of more focused on just like breathing itself.
Mhm.
But it seemed just, simple. But the app itself like seemed to have a lot of things to offer. I didn't
Mhm.
really get to look around in it too much yet because I just did it
Mhm.
last night, but
Yeah.
it seems to have a lot to offer, especially that it's free, which is really nice.
Yeah, yeah, he's appreciate. It's Dan Harris is responsible for beginning that app, and if anybody's familiar, and he's really very passionate about supporting folks during this. So yeah, thank you, Natalie. So you seem like there were, and you said that you did it with your son, and
Yeah.
he found use in it also.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, happy exploring with the app.
Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. And it was interesting. I'll just stop. But when you shared that, you did the 10-minute, but you thought, oh, maybe I should have done another, a longer one. It might have been interesting because a longer one might not have been the one your son. It might have been a little bit too much for your son. So
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So anyway, again, it's we play with things and we see we get to see our experience. So thank you, Natalie. Anybody
Yeah.
else want to share something? Oh, wait, I think we have, I'm sorry. Oh, the app, 10% happier app. Yeah, and I think that went into the resources, but we'll make sure that it in case it didn't, that it gets there. Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And so what I'd like to do now actually is we wanted to be able to offer many practices that are easy to do, that are, portable, free, all those wonderful things that can make things easier to access. And so what I'm going to lead you in now, is a practice called the 5-finger practice. And some of you you may be aware of this or maybe not, but it's a practice that you can use if you're noticing that you're stressed, or that you are having difficulty focusing, that you're all scattered, and brings you using senses, which is actually oftentimes the easiest and the most supportive way of bringing you into the moment. The body is always here, right? Emotions, thoughts can be all over the place, can carry us out of the moment, but the body and the sensations in the body are here in the present moment. So having said all that, what we're going to do is you're just going to actually take your non-dominant hand. It doesn't really matter, but it's to begin with, your non-dominant hand. And then you're going to take your pointer finger of the other hand. And then what you're just going to begin at the base of the thumb, and inhaling, you're just going to bring your finger on the outside of the thumb, just pausing ever so briefly, and then exhaling, bringing it down the other side of the thumb. Inhaling, bringing it up, pointer finger, and exhaling, bringing it down. And just continuing to do that at your own, whatever makes sense to you. Again, this is a practice to support you. So just whatever feels right. And this is something that you can do just on your own. You can do with your pupils, your students, clients. You can, here I am with my hand still up, with clients, with your family. Oftentimes, doing this with your kids and having your kids begin, or when they need to, need to kind of decompress, down regulate nervous systems, which we all need to do regularly. Just doing this practice. And what, in fact, when I talked about the sensations and the focusing, is we're using the sensation of touch and bringing our attention to the sensation of touch. Where also you can keep your eyes open or you can keep your eyes closed, but if you're keeping your eyes open, you also use the sense of sight to just follow the finger, up and down each of your fingers. And then with the breath, and again, all of these, if you don't want to move your finger in coordination with your breath, you don't have to do that. But in breathing, in the breath, we talked about the breath is directly influences our nervous system. So when we're riled up and we've been triggered, or we're in that stress, that fight or flight, our breath changes. It's short, it's fast, it's shallow oftentimes, and that just hypes up the nervous system, as opposed to when when we breathe slowly and often, and also the science, and the science supports all of this, the research, that when we breathe slowly, controlled breathing, and when we our exhalation is longer than our inhalation, we actually are stimulating our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest, the putting the brakes on our nervous system, and just coming back to, as best we can, that homeostasis. So again, you're using, the sense of sight, you're using the sense of the touch here, you're supporting your nervous system with the breath, and you're also kind of sensing the breath. So it's a very simple yet very effective tool that we carry around with us, easily accessible. And so I just wanted to offer that as a tool to practice in the moment, whether that's stat or whether it's just, just something to practice. All right, so let's take a look. Okie dokes. So any questions about 5-finger breathing? And again, what's really neat about this is the research and the support, the evidence that supports these practices. All right. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. And I am going to make this bigger. That is the plan. I'm going to get rid of this. All right. And every opportunity we take to pause gives us the ability to strengthen our mindfulness, our practice of showing up. So let's just very briefly define self-care. So self-care is defined as the daily process of being aware of and attending to one's basic physiological and emotional needs, including shaping of one's daily routine, relationships, and environment as needed to promote self-care. We all know that self-care is incredibly important, to support resiliency, to support our health, our well-being all over. And but when we're talking about mindful self-care, we're adding that piece of mindful awareness, of truly paying attention to what we're doing to care for ourselves, in order to see if it's supporting, or to really having a deeper, a different experience. So I just found this diagram, this diagram looking at, we could call it certain domains of self-care that are important to consider in taking care of ourselves. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to look at these different areas and see how bringing mindfulness, bringing awareness to these particular activities, these we can take care of ourselves, and how, as I said, mindfulness can actually shift the experience a little bit. So when we're talking about looking first at physicality, or physically, is that spelled right? I think so. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent already. I'll pull it back. Physically, we've talked about, the breath, how the breath can support us. And some of these are interesting because sometimes, I don't know about you, but when I think about self-care, I think that they have to be these major big deals, or, in some ways, taking care of myself by going to the spa, taking care of myself by going away on a vacation, taking care of myself in some of these ways that, uh, you know, I won't say aren't necessary, but they can be done in much subtler and in the moment kinds of ways. So when we talk about physically, as I said, the breath, we talked about the breath as being supportive of caring for ourselves, and how it manages, how it's helpful for our nervous system, for physically. And another piece is, we hear again and again the importance of exercise. And, but when we're mindful about it, when we're actually bringing mindfulness to perhaps our yoga practice, our stretching practice, or, whatever that might be, participating in a sport, when we're really paying attention, we can learn things about our bodies. We can see we can sense in and see if we're doing those exercises correctly, get a sense of our body, noticing what really supports us and what doesn't. Is, if I'm trying to do an activity that is, is this supporting me? Am I doing this because somebody is telling me that this is the right thing to do in the right amount of moments and all of that? Or is this something that I am actually aware that it is supportive, it is kind, it is, and it's also supporting my physical being. When we're talking about emotionally, looking at the emotional part of taking care of ourselves. We all are experiencing anxiety these days, and there's a whole spectrum of how folks experience anxiety, but here we are, essentially when we have fear coupled with uncertainty, it, ends up generating anxiety. And if there's anything that's certain right now, it seems to be the state of uncertainty. And fear, when we look at fear, it can be a very adaptive. We talked about, stress and the stress response. We talked about that a little bit last week, and that can be a lifesaver. If the fear is based in something real, then it can be very beneficial. But coupling it with the uncertainty, because our minds like uncertainty, our minds like regularity and certainty and reliability. When that's all taken away, there's this sense of anxiety. So to bring that in with regards to mindfulness, am I able to, with practicing mindfulness, am I able to be aware of when I'm feeling this anxiety? When I notice anxiety, where do I feel that? Perhaps in the body. Oftentimes it's in the area of the chest. When I'm aware of that, can I take that pause? Can I take that pause and recognize that this is my experience, and take a couple of breaths, or just at that point ask yourself, what do I know in this moment? What decisions can I make? What control do I have? Or is it just to sit, which may be just sitting and pausing and being with whatever the experience is in the moment? So talking about, I want to, thing that I'm not that crazy about with the screen sharing is I can't see other folks. Okay, let me, actually, does anybody just at this point with the physical and the emotional pieces that I just talked about, anybody have any comments or thoughts on that? All right. Well, let's talk about mentally then. And also to say that all of these are interconnected. So what can help me physically with regards to an activity, a physical activity? How is this for my mind? How is this for in regards to emotionally? How is this supporting me? So mentally, talking about, I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but the idea of, our minds are always chattering. Our minds, we're always, we always have these thoughts going on. And if you look at the brain science, most of those thoughts are self-referential. They have to do with us. They're focused on, our experience and whether that, and the stories that we can tell ourselves. And I don't know, as I said, if anybody can relate, but these thoughts of, the criticizing ourselves, being very judgmental of ourselves, of oftentimes, and they're usually not real positive judgments. They're oftentimes negative and self-condemning, or as I said, critical. And and if we're not paying attention, if we're not aware of our thoughts, of the stories that we tell ourselves, then we just we actively believe them, we buy into, and oftentimes that just perpetuates, or it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy of how how we move through our moments, how we move through our lives. And so again, it's very helpful to become aware of when we're of what our thinking is, being aware of, oh, there's that critical, there's that committee member that always tells me that I'm not doing something right, or I'm not doing something good enough, I'm not, and to be aware of that and pause and just, really, is this truth, or is this just a story? And oftentimes, where did it come from? And not even needing to get into all of that, but just the awareness again. Relationally, we are social beings. We need to feel a sense of connectedness, and to feel fulfilled, to feel satisfied, to feel that we have purpose. And so, when I bring mindfulness to my relationships, to my connection with others, can I what do I experience? What do I notice? Is this, perhaps this relationship really supporting me? Is it perhaps not? When I look in, what happens when I actually look into somebody's eyes, when I'm speaking with them, when I'm interacting with them? I always think it's interesting when I'm in a store, and I'm at the cash out line, that, if I'm with the cashier, when I actually look in their eyes at the end and I say, and if they have a tag, thanks, Tom, hope you have a good day. How, for myself, it's kind of selfish, because I notice that that something changes in me. I feel a sense of connectedness. I feel, I feel good that I'm offering somebody something, something positive or supportive, hopefully for themselves. And it's also lovely to see that, oftentimes their response. And so these little pieces that I need to be present and aware in order to, make choices. Or when I'm hugging somebody, I know not everybody can do that these days, but how does it feel to actually connect with somebody that you care deeply about, and be, having that connection physically? And then when we're talking about spiritually, I'm just looking at, when we're talking about spiritually, how do we take care of ourselves, our spiritual piece, and whether that is believing in a particular faith or tradition, or whether it's being in nature, whether it is being, connected to some creative sense of yourself. What are you noticing when you're actually participating in those pieces? Or how does it feel when you're going out into nature and, really noticing colors, noticing shapes and smells and connection, feeling yourself walking on the earth? So, bringing a mindful awareness to all of these pieces can only be beneficial. Well, I can support a fuller experience, a different way of being, in relationship to whatever the moment's experience is. So I'm going to stop sharing and just would like to hear, folks, when I talked about those different things, whether any kind of thoughts came to mind, or, perhaps experiences that you've had with these particular domains, or taking care of yourself, or finding that, what supports you, what supports your well-being, and how you do care for yourself. And if you want to, you can type it in the chat, or you can just unmute and share.
Hey, Lesley.
Hi, Becky.
Hi. I wasn't on last week, but I felt like the practice of mindfulness has helped me with all of those pieces of the pie, because it sort of creates that space to be less reactive, whether it's towards myself, towards my relationships, or towards being at peace, so that I can take in, if I go to church. So I feel like the mindfulness practice helps all those pieces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that. Can I ask you, can I put you on the spot and ask you, and of course you can always say no, but ask you, when you say that it helps all of those experiences, can you think of something how that helps you? How maybe you talked about providing that space, that opportunity, that opportunity. Is there anything, anything else that you find?
Like an example?
Yeah.
Like for instance, sure, within my family unit, I notice, I've been practicing mindfulness now for probably 10 years. And it's kind of like a continuous thing I have to come back to, just like physical exercise. But what I notice is that it helps me be less reactive, so that it establishes much better, healthier communication within my family unit. Mm-hmm. And we have gotten so much closer. And then with my relationship to exercise, I used to be super gung-ho in my younger years, run it out. And I feel like now I have a closer relationship to whatever it is I'm doing, that it really helps kind of make it a full body soul experience. Mm-hmm. And it just makes everything deeper, richer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just, and we're going to talk more about communication next week, but I was just thinking, as you shared, about being with the family and relationships, how, I don't know, this isn't towards you, Becky, but oftentimes how paying attention to the way that I listen can really change that sense of connectedness. So the idea that, and not sure if other people experience this, but when I'm sharing something with somebody, and when they're no longer listening, they're no longer present, wherever they are, who knows where they are, but they're not there with you. and how that kind of curtain goes down and how that feels, right? It's not really it's not a great feeling. And, so again, if I'm practicing, listening in a mindful way, I can notice, because our minds go off, right? This is the nature of the mind. It's all over the place all the time. But when I notice that I am now making a shopping list, or that I already want to answer I have an answer for this person. When I notice that, I can say, hey, isn't that interesting? Look, there goes my mind, there goes my mind. And I can come back to actually listening to this individual who I am in relationship with. And, listening, paying attention to somebody else is a real gift. It's a real gift. So yeah, thanks so much, Becky. I appreciate that. Anybody else have any thoughts or? Okay, Erin, I see Erin saying, I use the tool of tapping fingers when I feel overwhelmed or criticized. It helps to prevent a possible negative reaction to the trigger or the person. Okay, thank you, Erin. May I ask, and if you're willing to, are you able to, can you unmute and just maybe show us just what you mean when you mean tapping?
I do a little chant too.
Okay. Okay, so it's
switch fingers.
So, okay. So beautiful. Thank you. Because again, it's one of these things, what do I find supportive, right? And so this idea, again, with this finger tapping, again, I'm using, I'm using the sense of touch. I can bring my attention to that particular sensation. Yep. Vibration in the body, healing, kind of experience. Also, with that, when you said you say something or you chant something, the vibration created by, by making sound, by making, again, vibrating, the vibrations also stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. So that, sometimes we'll say, oh, when you feel stressed, or sometimes singing can be very therapeutic, or, and it's, and sometimes, people will be like, oh, come on. But even from a scientific standpoint, research, it makes sense, because it's creating vibration. You're using the breath. Oftentimes your exhalation is longer than your inhalation. So there's these things that are, sometimes you think, oh, that's silly. What's that going to do? Again, it can, it makes a difference. But you have to know if singing helps you or it doesn't.
Yeah.
So again, and we only know that this is the other piece. We only really know of what benefit something is or is not beneficial if we're paying attention to what the experience is in the moment. Right. Yeah. So thank you, Erin. I appreciate that. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I'm going to go back to screen sharing and talk a little bit more about specific things that we can do. If I can, okay. All right, let's move along from this one. Okay, so again, here's a few just thoughts of how, rather than, we can practice mindfulness in absolutely anything moment. So whereas having a formal practice, taking those times to actually meditate is, is a way of strengthening a foundation to be more mindful, be more aware as you walking through the day. There's other just very practical, very easy ways to bring mindfulness into your day. So we talked about mindful breathing. Mindful eating how many people are, you start a meal and the next thing is it's done. You didn't even taste the food, or maybe something, oh, that's good, that's bad, but you never really had, it was just kind of this, superficially going through the meal. Or you are just eating so fast, you realize later on that you've just eaten too much and there's discomfort in that. Or you find some people stress eating, I don't know, I think I might have said this, but, I find that if something, gets me worked up, I'm anxious or whatever, the next thing is I've got the cupboards open, I've got the refrigerator open, and so that's become a habit. That's a very familiar habit with me. So what if we brought a mindful awareness to eating? What if we actually paid attention intentionally to what food looks like, what it tastes like, what it smells like? Just, having the experience of being fully present for food. Where did this food come from? Who was involved in bringing this food to this table? Who was, what is, what is the experience like? When am I full? I mean, am I even hungry? How often do we just eat because of, it's time to eat? So again, all of these things we can bring to very simple activities that we have to do every day, and become more aware. I'm going to talk more about the communication next week. Mindful walking. I mean, we all get from one place to another. We have to get from one place to another. So again, what if we paid attention to actually what it was like to walk? I mean, when we walk, it's usually with the intention to get somebody or get somewhere. I apologize. But what if we just walked to walk? That we paid attention to what it was like to actually feel the sensations of moving one leg and another, and feeling that contact, feeling the body moving, and using that actually as a practice, a focusing practice, to notice when your mind goes off. Oh my gosh, what's it going to be like when I get into work? I don't want to, the kids. Oh my God, just the idea of the kids for the day. What if I were able to bring my attention back and just practice walking mindfully, and noticing perhaps that when you arrive at that door, there may be you may be arriving in a different way. So mindfulness cues, I'll talk about that in a sec. I'm looking at my clock that I'm not seeing, but even waiting in line, I want to see where we are time-wise. Oh, okay. All right. So waiting in line, here's a great practice. So, you're waiting in line at a grocery store or wherever, and how often we've stopped, right? We're not going anywhere. So why not practice a little awareness? How do I feel in my body? Am I, how do I feel that there's 3 people in front of me and they haven't opened up another line? How do I feel that there's a story, and I'll just briefly tell that there was a fella in a mindfulness class, and he had been put there because he had anger issues. He was he would have these anger outbursts, and he was, kind of told to go to this mindfulness class. And so anyway, halfway through the class, he found himself waiting in line in a grocery line one day, and ahead of him, he's a couple people back, and he notices that the cashier, there's a woman that is the grocer, and she has a child. She's holding a child. And the cashier is paying attention to the child and not to, cashing her out. And he's finding that he's getting annoyed with this. Come on, I got things to do. And he notices this in the body. And he's been practicing, like breathing, checking in, feeling the soles of his feet on the floor. And he kind of, he feels himself a little relaxed. And the next thing is this woman passes this child to the cashier, and he's like, oh, what is going on here? This is crazy. This is not what's supposed to be happening. So anyway, long story short, he gets up to the cashier, and he checks in, he notices his thinking, how agitated he's getting, and he takes a couple breaths. He gets up to the cashier, and he said, He said, oh, he said, that kid was kind of cute. You know, did you know him? And the woman said, oh, thanks for noticing that. She said, that's my son. She said, I always get a little choked up with this, but she said, my husband was killed in Afghanistan last year, and I had to get a job. And I come here, you know, I'm a cashier here, and my mom brings my child in every day just to say hi. And, you know, when you think about that story, again, it's similar to the fifth grader that said I didn't have to hit him, because that individual was able to be aware, be able to care for himself by taking care of his nervous system and his reactivity. When he got up to that cashier, it was a whole different experience than it potentially could have been. And how does that, you know, how does that affect all the moments that follow for him, for the you know, for the cashier, all of those kinds of things. So every moment has an opportunity to you know, to be present. Okie dokes. All right. So essentially, we can be mindful with absolutely anything. All right. So another couple of opportunities, more intentional kind of mindfulness practices. I won't say formal, but a little more structured. We talked about, well, relaxing sighs. I mean, intentionally practicing relaxing sighs. We're breathing in through our nose, we're pausing, and then we're exhaling out, whether that's with a sigh, whether it's, you know, and just taking that moment to pause. And there's a practice called stop, and I'll give you, or there will be instructions in the resource section on stop. But essentially, the acronym is simply real simple. You stop, you know, you take a breath, you pause, and you observe what's going on. Oh, what am I noticing in my body? What sensations am I noticing in my body? What are my thoughts? What's going on here? How am I feeling emotionally? And just pausing, and then in an intentional way, with intentional choices, proceeding. How do I need to move? You know, how do I need to move forward? Who am I bringing into the next moment? The soles of the feet is another practice I'll be sharing instruction on, but essentially it is just, you know, connecting in the moment with the sensations of the soles of the feet on the floor. So, you know, we can find ourselves getting scattered, getting drawn away, getting overwhelmed, you know, with just about, we can get overwhelmed with anything, but to be able to, again, direct our attention, focus our attention on one area helps us to kind of collect ourselves, to bring ourselves into a way of being that is more useful. So focusing on on your soles of the feet. We did the 5-finger breathing, the noting, and the I'll send a little piece about noting, and then the 5 senses. Also, we have a instruction on 5 senses, which is essentially, just as it says, using our senses and checking, you know, what are things that I see? What are things that I smell, I taste, I hear, as a way of bringing myself into the present moment, and really getting you know, becoming aware that there's a whole heck of a lot more than just me in my self-focused, oftentimes ruminating, perhaps worrying, overwhelming kinds of ways of being. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and noticing the time, and just wondering if anybody had any comments that they wanted to share, either in the chat or in just unmuting and sharing. Okay.
Can you hear me, Lesley?
Yes, Olivia, please.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, I wanted to share one thing. Was at first I didn't have my video on today because I was eating breakfast. It just happened this week that I needed to eat breakfast around that time. But last week I was able to have the video running the whole time, and I was noticing this week versus last week with the perspective that with the video off, I wasn't focusing as easily or as naturally, and I was like getting more distracted. So just realizing that first, and it could be just, you know, person to person, but for me, having the video on, I focus in more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, great. Thank you for sharing that. And we are so totally distracted by so many different things, you know, with whether it's technology or you see something ping or ding, and all of a sudden you're kind of brought into that. Or as you say, it's our, you know, it's kind of our nature to take things in. And the brilliant, or the not brilliant, the beautiful piece of that is when I'm recognizing, as you said, when I recognize that piece, then I can make a choice. So, oh, okay, I'm going to see what it's like to put my video on, or see what it's like to turn my notifications off. Or I'm, you know, there's another, and then I'll stop, but I think I found out about this feature on Zoom, which I find is interesting, is you can actually turn off, you can keep seeing everybody, but you can turn off your own screen, like what you look like, which is really interesting, because how often are we drawn to our own selves on Zoom? You know, you know, we keep checking in with how we look or what's going on, or, oh my God, I didn't comb my hair, whatever it is, you know. So again, might be something to consider playing with. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't know if it was accountability, like when you're on, then people, I felt like more engaged last week, so I wanted that back. I wanted, even though we're distanced, like it felt more personal to have the video on.
Yeah, yeah.
And see more people.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Because again, I mean, just talking about self-care, your recognition of that, where you said, you know, hey, I'm, you know, I feel more connected, or whatever that is. We need a sense of connectedness. We need, you know, when we support ourselves, all of these things. And it's just this very brief piece of, you know, those very little things of being aware, and hey, you know, what can I do to increase connectivity, or, you know, accountability? Is this about whatever it is? When we're paying attention, it's like, wow, I get to investigate. I get to be curious about what this is. So, so thanks. I appreciate with that. And somebody else also in the chat said that Randy, that he feels more, or they feel more engaged when, you know, when we're together. Talk about more. Okay, so what I'd like to do is, just to be respectful of other people's time, just say that, you know, would love to see you next week, and we'll talk about, next week we're going to be talking more about communication, mindful communication, and also compassion and you know, self-compassion, compassion, you know, with others, and exploring that more. But I'd also like to invite anybody that wants, I'm seeing a couple of questions, anybody that wants to stay, you know, on a little later, we can investigate those a little bit more. If anybody has any experiences or questions that they want to ask, please hang around. And for everybody else, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, all right, take care. Okay, so I'm looking. Oh, great. So Lynn said that this is something, the 5-finger breathing was something that that hopefully will be useful. And actually, the person that developed that, and I can't think. She works primarily. She does a lot of work with children, so it kind of came out of that place. But I mean, we're all kids there somewhere, right? And I find that I'll find that what I'll do is I'm noticing that I'm getting, you know, a little wound up, and I'm with other people, or I'm on a Zoom call or whatever, and I just, you know, I have my hand on my lap, and I can actually just, you know, at that point do the practice and just get a little more grounded, a little more centered. So you know, I found that helpful in a whole bunch of ways. Let's see. Somebody said something about the soles of the feet. I'm looking for, oh, tell you more about why practicing the soles of the feet. Yeah, sure. Okay, so the practice of the soles of the feet, again, it's bringing your attention. Oftentimes, oftentimes we have to open our awareness. We have to open our attention because we can be so self-focused, so narrowly focused. And so there's practices that help us to kind of open up. And then there's times where we may be so scattered, so overwhelmed. So, you kind of feel, I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm not in touch with anything. I feel like I am just out there. And so in times like that, when I notice that, bringing a concentration to a particular area is helpful. So it's helpful for just focusing my attention and focusing my attention, and also focusing sensations in this respect in the soles of the feet, because, and you want the soles, you want your soles of the feet on the ground, feeling that connection with the earth, with something that is stable, something that is grounding. And then noticing which will happen is, once again, the thinking will happen. You'll go off. And this is also good to notice if you're feeling particular emotions, anger, or you're feeling more so with those agitated kinds of emotions. Again, you're bringing it down to, a very, kind of narrow focused area, which can be, in this instance, the soles of the feet. And, but to say that you can choose any area of your body. Some people find bringing their attention to their hands very helpful, not even doing practice like this, but just actually bringing awareness to the hands sitting still, because our hands, are very sensitive. We can oftentimes feel sensations in our hands, vibrations, pulsing, warmth, coolness, and that can be helpful. So, hopefully I talked about that. If not, pop something in. And yeah, anybody else have any questions or anything they'd like to share? And just noticing, how attentive are you right now? Like, where's your attention right in this moment? And again, it's not bad or good, right? It's just, the more we're aware, the more we can decide, oh, is this where I want my attention to go? Oh yeah, it is, because it's of benefit in this moment to be having this these thoughts, or these, whatever that is. So yeah. So let me just check. There's one more chat. Okay. All right. So I think that we can wind it up, and lovely to see you, and hope to see you next week.